I'm Debbie Millman, and I am the co-founder and chair of the Masters in Branding program here at the School of Visual Arts in New York City. The Masters in Branding program is the world's first and now longest running program in the world that looks at branding through both an academic and a professional lens to prepare students for a magnificent career in branding. All of our faculty are working professionals. So they are both academics as well as professionals. So they are practicing what they preach, they're testing their ideas, and they're creating new ideas in the classroom with our students. The students that we had 10 years ago now are running agencies that they went to work in. They're working in corporations and making huge impact. So I feel really proud of the legacy that we're creating with the student body that comes out of the program.
My name is Richard Scheer, and I teach the origins of package design, brand identity, and retail markets. The course is a history course. It's a 500-year survey. It talks about the 4 stages that we've gone through in retail brand design, starting with the merchant, then the manufacturer, then the retailer, and arguably now the state that we're in is one of communities and building consumer and brand communities. Mark Twain has a wonderful saying that history doesn't always repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And one of the things we do in the course is what we call modern analogies, where we bring to life a lesson from history and make an analogy to the present day. What I hope to do in this course is give them the tools to decode iconic brands' history, try and create a community with brands, and then plan for their future based on where they've been in the past.
My name is Mark Kingsley. I am a designer and strategist. I've been teaching in the program for 6 years. I teach a class that I call Logo Insignifica. It's a cornucopia of everything from any kind of source that I can use. The class changes every year. I try to be as reactive as possible to the climate of brands today. Quite often I've had students just say 1 or 2 sentences, which will totally change my whole point of view on something. I hope that students take away from the class basically the same thing that all education strives for, which is to basically just open a door and say, there's this whole territory out here, go play.
I'm Brett Sanford Chung, and I teach the business of branding. I like to think of it as a translation course, in that business, there's a language of business. And most people with a creative bent don't speak that language. But in order to get a place at the table, and for the brand to get a place at the table, you need to be able to understand how a company makes money, what the business people running the company care about, and how your work will impact what they do. So what we do is we look at brand strategy, business strategy, the basics of business, and then put it all together to create better solutions for brands. Because in a perfect world, business strategy and brand strategy are one and the same thing, or are working very closely in parallel. So being able to understand the nature of the business and how the business is run, so that as a branding professional, you can create solutions that work strategically.
I'm Tom Goriello. I'm a member of the founding faculty here at the School of Visual Arts Masters in Branding program. I'm a psychologist, and I teach a class that I was lucky enough to be able to create called The Meaning of Branded Objects. And it's a class about how objects become meaningful to us, and in particular how brands establish connections with people that make the objects that we buy from those brands special to us. The class is focused on students using their own experience of brands and their own experience of the world for understanding customers and how the rest of us experience the world too. And using that to inform decisions about how to create products, how to communicate about those products, how to emphasize the things that are important about those products. That's what I hope students take away from my class.
My name is Tosh Hall. I've been teaching in the SVA Masters in Branding program for 4 years. What I wanted to teach was basically everything that I'd learned in the last 20 years. It's very kind of practical, how we operate as a business, how I've come to understand branding, and my kind of personal perspective on it. I teach a class called Brand Failures. I call it branding the good, the bad, and the ugly. Part history, we do like basically the last 5 to 6 decades of branding work and talk about why brands have failed, what makes them good, what makes them ugly, how to kind of use fundamentals of branding and make them agnostic to technology. So even as the pace of technology changes, the fundamentals of branding should remain the same.
I'm Scott Lerman. I'm part of the founding faculty of the Masters in Branding program.
My name is Melanie Wiesenthal. I'm a faculty member in the Masters of Branding program.
The course we're teaching is Building Better Brands, which really comes out of a hope that we can teach students about the entire process of doing a major corporate branding program. We really are looking to change the nature of how companies exist and project their identities in the world. We did corporate identity. We created new logos. We did all sorts of hygiene about the way we design things. And there was a point at which we started to get into the strategic positioning of global corporations. To do that, we had to learn how to define companies in strategic ways.
The part I like the most is the workshop, where we have the students break out into teams and actually look at a current corporation and how through the framework they could identify insights, opportunities, and then eventually realize some of those ideas.
My name is Kenna Kay, and I teach the power of persuasion here at the School of Visual Arts Masters in Branding program. Well, branding is all about getting people to do what you want them to do, to change their actions. So we study the hidden motivations behind what makes people make those choices. We start the class by studying the ancient Greeks, ethos, pathos, and logos, the classical techniques of what can make you a persuasive speaker. And then we go on from there and study other theories of social science, and then we end up in behavioral economics. The main tool that the students learn in my class is the ability to see when persuasion is happening and to be able to know when they can insert themselves into a decision-making situation, to know where, how, and why people make the decisions that they do, and how they can affect change.
I'm Dan Formosa. I am one of the founding faculty, so I've been here since the beginning. My course changes topics almost week by week. I start out with understanding data and data visualization, and then I eventually get into statistics, like hardcore statistics. What do we do with that data, and how do we pull meaning out of it? But then I'll change topics. I'll go literally into biomechanics. How does the body work? Or I'll go into psychology or perceptions. How do we perceive things? I'll talk about physiology. How do our eyes work, right? How do we read? I don't go deep dive in any of those topics, but I feel it's a good idea to plant those seeds across the boards, because all of those topics are relevant in creating products and services that will really influence or determine the meaning of that brand.
My name is Pablo Yulpiano. I've been with the program since 2012, first as a student and since 2014 as a creative director for the thesis project. Yeah, so during the thesis program, I help as creative director. So the students go through the process of working with a brand that actually has lost the pace of culture. Students will start with research and identifying opportunities, going through that process of idea identification, and then during the design process, which is where I help them most, they bring those ideas to life beyond what people will expect from these brands, and really cracking what will be the most meaningful executions to bring to life for these brands to become more relevant with culture.
My name is Andrea Sullivan, and I teach the Pitch Perfect class with Andrew Miller.
My name is Andrew Miller, and actually started as a student, graduating with the second class in 2012, and then I joined the faculty in 2016, so I've been teaching for 4 years now.
Andrew and I were very excited about the whole idea of how can we grow students that can then have exciting careers by applying knowledge and doing it in a real-time setting with pretty tough clients.
We put them in front of the client on the first night of the class. Get to know them, ask them questions, try to understand the brief and the challenge, that they can sink their teeth in as quickly as possible.
There's a great deal of anticipation, right? Both on behalf of the client, in addition to the students, and trying to understand, okay, what is the business challenge? How are we framing that challenge up? So we try to coach the students to look around corners, look at different angles, and to try to develop that chemistry with the client early on. but also teach them the critical thinking skills that allow them to be thinking on their own, to be able to integrate the ideas around business, design, strategy, and to tie them up in a way that will really advance our clients' businesses.
The SVA Masters in Branding annual thesis seeks to reposition and rebrand societal constructs around innate belief systems, cultural norms, human rights, government and public policy, entertainment, and sports. The criteria for the brands we choose is simple, but we take it very seriously. We look to work with impactful brands that, for whatever reason, haven't kept pace with culture. These brands have fallen, but have the possibility for redemption. The brands have deep relevance, longevity, or historical legacy. The brands must respect or convey a core human value or signify something important in our times. The goals for our thesis are the following. The thesis should add meaningful discourse to a cultural or global conversation. The thesis should be an original body of work with ownable and defendable real-world ideas and solutions. And the finished endeavor should help students get a job in the discipline of branding.